Welcome, everybody. I'm Conley Wilson. I'm the VP of Growth over here at Enertiv, and thanks everyone for joining me today. Um, if you haven't joined an Enertiv webinar before, um, we keep these quick, 25 minutes in and out. We'll try to teach you something along the way, and obviously we'll send you a recording of this afterwards. And if you have any questions or follow-up, feel free to reach out to me directly, calmly@enertiv.com. All right, let's dive in. So, topic for today is diagnosing a portfolio of assets, a step-by-step framework to identify utility gaps and also decarbonization priorities. And we'll talk about the context here and then get into the meat of it pretty quickly. So let's start with the dream scenario for decarbonizing a commercial real estate portfolio. To start, you have full utility data coverage and completeness, meaning coverage, all of the utility accounts, whether they're landlord or tenant controlled, are reported on and benchmarked. And completeness, there are no gaps in that data over time. Any base building systems that are managed by the landlord are optimized, and any building operators are engaged. They're aware of sustainability initiatives and they're bought into the vision. Likewise, tenants are engaged around sustainability. Obviously, tenant means a lot of different things for different property types, but broadly, the tenants are on the same side and rowing in the same direction. In any scenario where renewable energy or various energy programs, such as like demand response, are available, those are deployed everywhere they pencil. Likewise, when you do purchase energy, right, it's purchased sustainably and as cost effectively as possible. And decarbonization is woven into capital plans, meaning that when equipment needs to be replaced or facades need to be replaced or any aspect of the building needs a capital investment, capital expenditure, decarbonization is considered as part of that. And a lot of teams are doing this to some extent, but it's very hard to stay on top of everything across a large and diverse portfolio. So it's always helpful to start with the dream scenario. Where are we trying to get to? And then we'll talk about reality. So, from our experience, portfolios are often in one of a few buckets. On one hand, teams are still often getting mired in data collection. Like benchmarking is rarely perfect. There's a lot of validation and cleanup necessary, and that takes a lot of time away from the decarbonization priorities. In portfolios with a significant amount of triple net assets, industrial and retail primarily, those often data coverage there and benchmarking there remains a glaring gap in many scenarios. And an increasing amount of sustainability team's time is spent understanding and navigating regulatory environments, state and municipal rules around benchmarking and building performance, as well as voluntary submissions like GRESB or CDP and all those. All of this is important. It's nearly impossible to move on to the next step if you don't have solid benchmarking and data coverage in place. But even if you get all these right, reporting does not drive decarbonization in and of itself. So when it consumes a disproportionate amount of time, little capacity is left for the work that actually drives value, right? Analyzing projects, getting things implemented, evaluating bids, et cetera, et cetera. So, as mentioned, even when reporting is, you know, it's cut and dry, we have, everything is automated. We feel like there's data accuracy, we have coverage and completeness. Um, maybe we have a third party consultant who handles the regulatory and voluntary submissions. We're ready to get on to decarbonization. A lot of teams find um, the menu of decarbonization options is overwhelming, right? Well, you know, even without good benchmarking, a lot of teams are like, well, let's just do LED upgrades because we know that works and it's pretty straightforward from a return on investment perspective. But when it gets into the nitty-gritty of um, you know, enrolling in demand response programs across different utility jurisdictions or trying to get solar energy to match lease terms and lease lengths, or to evaluate, real-time monitoring whether or not there's a building automation system in place, or staying on top of those equipment replacements um, and evaluating equipment upgrades, or launching tenant engagement programs. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many things that you can do. So how do you know where to spend your time and where to focus your energy? To add to that problem, there's no silver bullet, right? Even if you say, I know this strategy works. I know that, where we have a building automation system, we can do real-time monitoring and drive energy savings and decarbonize. That's not going to work everywhere, right? That's not going to work for multifamily properties that don't have a building management system, or industrial properties that where the tenant controls operations, right? There's no silver bullet. Also, I was at the IMN Sustainability Conference in Nashville last week, and over this theme of increasing scrutiny on the financial aspect of whatever's proposed by sustainability kept coming up. Um, there are, each of these projects have to pencil, and they have to pencil within the framework of the business case for that property, which makes things really challenging. It just adds complexity to an already complex process. So the big question and the topic for today is like, how can increasingly small teams, that's another factor here, is we keep seeing that the team size for a sustainability department keeps getting smaller and smaller. How do you get the most out of your limited resources, meaning your time and your budget, right? How do you work within these constraints, right? We have to do benchmarking, we have to do compliance. Nothing in the decarbonization world is a silver bullet, and it has to pencil. How do we work with these constraints? So we put together, a framework, right? Energy Star Portfolio Manager is an amazing source of data, right? You can go step by step here, right? And either in Energy Star, in a reporting tool, in Excel, you can sort and find the assets that have no data. Because at first we need good benchmarking to know where to focus, right? Make sure, like check for assets where they have data, but we don't have recent data, right? We're not getting data in on a timely manner. Or where we have data, but it's clearly not, we don't have the coverage piece. We might have completeness for electricity data, but we're not capturing all the electric meters. Maybe most of them are tenant controlled. Likewise, right? Like we might have gas data or no gas data. Does that mean we're getting everything, or does that mean it's tenant controlled, or is there no gas on site? Right. And so I won't go through all of these, but there is a step-by-step framework where you can diagnose, gaps and issues in your reporting, which for most cases, maybe LED retrofits are the outlier. have to be solved before we can really, focus our attention on decarbonization. So after you do that, um, you know, deciding what to do from a decarbonization perspective can be really complex, but you can follow a relatively straightforward framework, right? Like take your portfolio, overlay the um, the utility jurisdictions that offer demand response programs, see where there's overlap. Likewise, see where you're in deregulated markets. Do an analysis of the roof area of your assets and see where that maps to markets where there's still good solar incentives. And obviously there's a ticking clock there in terms of the ITC. Um, Identify where there's low-hanging fruit, right? Like where there's very high energy use intensity and um, it's an old building that, where things like insulation can make a big difference. Um, Segment out the properties that have centralized HVAC. There's often a lot more you can do there. Um, and segment out the triple net assets where you have tenants who are likely to engage and you have data that indicates that you could help them save money. So there's a lot of things you can do here. It takes a lot of time and it's pretty complex. Um, One alternative is to build all of that logic into automation and focus on the output of that automation, not the legwork to get there, right? And that's what we've done here at Enertiv. We call it a portfolio diagnostic. It's free, and I'll talk about it more at the end of the webinar. But I want to go through like an example output so that we can get from, where am I at today in terms of my decarbonization journey, and different assets are going to be at different points along that journey, and where should I focus my time? So example output here, this is a 305 building portfolio. It's geographically diverse across the United States. It's relatively evenly split between industrial and multifamily, and then it has a little bit of office and a little bit of retail as well. So in a snap, you can see that there are severe data quality and reporting issues off the bat. Basically, half of the buildings have at least one data reporting issue, either no electricity or no water, or there hasn't been any update in the last 90 days, or there is electricity data, but it is clearly not covering it's clearly not representative of the entire load. In this case, right, no surprise, most of those data quality issues come from triple net properties where benchmarking and data coverage is a known challenge because tenants pay the bills. Likewise, the all of the policies across the US and Canada, these are very, very challenging to fully understand at the portfolio level because they're all slightly different. They require different things at different times. They have different exclusions. They have different penalties, and those go into force at different times. Fortunately, there's this thing called AI now, and you can basically synthesize all of that information, which just exists in text form across the country, and overlay that or compare that to the portfolio that's being diagnosed and immediately see where you stand, right? Out of the 305 properties, 40% are subject to regulations, And of those 121, 31, so 25% are at risk of non-compliance. Okay, now we've pretty instantly gotten to the meat of it. And I need to justify a budget to asset management. Here's the quantification of the status quo. Here's the quantification of doing nothing over $3 million a year in average in penalties combined. If you average that out across the 31 buildings, about 103K per property. So this exercise, which is often like very challenging for in-house teams, can be done by third-party consultants, but those are not cheap, and they're often doing this kind of work manually. Can be done in a automated fashion today. Okay, so those are the, like benchmarking and compliance. Those are the necessary but necessary evils that have to get completed. Now we'll get on to the opportunities. So, like I mentioned, similarly to the regulations and the policies that buildings are subject to, the opportunities are also equally as complex to navigate when looking at a diverse portfolio. They're all local incentives. They are dependent on the utility jurisdiction, the state, the city. So again, instead of doing a manual analysis of every single building, automation can say, out of your 305 properties, 106 of them are, have enough rooftop space and are in jurisdictions that offer good solar incentives. 106 is a lot. There's gonna have to be more work here. There's still gonna have to do the work of seeing, how it fits in with lease terms and all that. But it does narrow it down pretty quickly. Likewise, there are 169 properties that are in jurisdictions that offer demand response programs. This can be narrowed down further by, or it can be segmented further by demand response being offered to the landlord, where it's a direct check and increases NOI directly, or it can be a service that can be brought to tenants. Same thing on the procurement side. So whereas this kind of work, and then actually you can take this a step further and make some reasonable estimates to quantify the value here. But this type of work is often overwhelming for teams that spend 80% of their time on compliance and reporting. And then finally, benchmarking, the whole point of benchmarking is to define your priority assets. And so, like, where should we spend our limited time and energy? So you can say, all right, I want to look at properties that have really good benchmarking data. We're very confident that the data that we're seeing is representative of the site. It's up to date, it's complete in terms of time, and it's full coverage in terms of the whole building load. Take it a step further and say which of those are in maybe jurisdictions that have building performance standards, and then which of those have the highest energy use intensities, right? Let's get a on-site survey of the equipment here and make sure that nothing gets replaced here in kind, and that every CapEx decision has a decarbonization consideration during budgeting season. Likewise, like in this case, we have a large industrial portfolio. It's going to be really hard to decarbonize if we don't engage tenants at all, where is there where is there good data and poor energy use intensity, or where is there bad data? And then finally, uh, which of our assets have centralized equipment where those are like prime candidates, like especially if they have a low Energy Star score or a high energy use intensity and centralized HVAC. Those are prime candidates for real-time monitoring, whether or not there's a building management system. So this kind of takes the bird's eye view and gets you down to a specific set of assets. We can look at what this looks like, at the ground level too. So we'll take two examples overall. One industrial asset in Massachusetts. This one has no data. We have no idea. It's a black box in terms of its carbon emissions and utility consumption. Tenant pays the bill. They have not been willing to share their data. Very common scenario. However, Massachusetts does require benchmarking. So there's a potential violation of $150 a day, $54,000 a year for non-compliance here. And as the landlord of a triple net site, you might say, well, I'm just going to pass that cost down to the tenant if they don't share their data. You can do that, but A, it's not serving your ultimate decarbonization goals, and B, that's not a very fun conversation to have with a tenant. It would be much more productive to say, let's work together, not only to automate this reporting piece, but actually do something about your utility costs, something they would actually care about. So a recommendation might be to let's automate the reporting here with shadow metering. Let's build a digital inventory of the rooftop HVAC units so that we can, even if we're going to pass down the cost to tenants, we want to make sure that there are high efficiency or electric models in place when we do CapEx investments here. And then likewise, we can support the tenant. We can help them enroll in a demand response program or energy procurement. In some cases, as the landlord bringing that service to the tenant, you can actually earn revenue. You can earn, essentially a referral fee for doing that. And Massachusetts still has very strong solar incentives. Community solar is a great option where, the solar is being set up with a PPA, not necessarily for that tenant. And it's another, non-rental revenue source. And then at the same time, through the shadow metering, you can provide optimization insights to the tenants, which, A, it's great for decarbonization. B, helps asset management justify passing down those costs to tenants. So it's actually sounds like a lot, but there's not that many things that need to be done to unlock all of this and potentially flip, right, a $54,000 a year fine to, hey, tenant, we've helped you either earn or save, over $100,000 a year. That would make a big difference in a increasingly competitive industrial market. So let's flip it over to an example of a multifamily asset. So this one has an Energy Star score of 59. It's in New York, so it's subject to Local Law 97. When you look at the benchmarking data, Con Ed makes it very easy to get whole building data, but this building is missing water data. So first thing, let's get that in place. It's also, New York has a good demand response and deregulated energy market. So those are programs you can enroll in where the benefits flow directly to the landlord. And then because it's subject to Local Law 97 building performance standards, and it has a high energy use intensity, the estimated violation cost is $180K a year. So that the cost of doing nothing is very, very high in this scenario. With centralized HVAC, um, real-time monitoring is a really good option. You typically see 8 to 12% energy savings here, but you can get as high as 20 or 30%. And likewise, while you're there, right, digitize that equipment for long-term carbon planning. So again, sounds like a lot, but really all we're talking about here is, um, you know, software uh, to digitize the utility bills. From there, it's very easy to calculate both demand response and energy procurement and deploy equipment level monitoring, which um, has a very strong track record of bottom line return on investment value. So something that can be sold to asset management relatively well. Okay, we're at the 27-minute mark. Thank you everyone for sticking with me. Um, At this point, if you've made it this far, if you want a portfolio diagnostic, again, it's free. If you do it as a result of this webinar, we'll send you a $100 Amazon gift card. So you'll get an email with the recording, simply reply to that, and we'll get you set up on your portfolio diagnostic. All we're doing here is we'll get read-only access to your Energy Star account. We're happy to sign NDAs or any other confidentiality agreements necessary. And thank you. That's the end of the webinar. I will stick around for a few minutes if anybody has questions. But other than that, I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you again soon. Uh, got the question, Energy Star data is all you need to run this? The answer is yes. Does this also work with Canadian provinces and policies? The answer is yes. And unless there are any other questions, again, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.